Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, friends. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Coffee Chats with Aisha. Super excited to chat with our guest here today. We're going to be talking all things chasing truth and finding purpose. Listeners, you'll be taking away reflections on the transformative journey of a revert to Islam, exploring things such as personal growth, wearing the hijab, building confidence in one's faith, and the unique challenges faced by online creators in balancing their own digital presence with spirituality. Join us for a conversation that is filled with profound insights and inspiration on navigating diverse facets of life through the lens of Islam, as shared by our guest, Sydney. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sydney, how are you doing?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm very good, alhamdulillah. You?
I'm doing super well. I'm so excited. I know there's, a bit of a time difference, so I appreciate you jumping on today's call. I let you, introduce yourself, and we'll jump into the rest of today's conversation, inshallah.
Okay, so I'm Sydney. I'm a revert Muslim. I've reverted about a year ago now, and I've been making content on YouTube for about 2 years now, and recently just sharing my lifestyle as a revert Muslim, and I really enjoy doing that. So I guess that's why I'm here.
Awesome. I love to hear that. Well, we'll jump into things. The question that I have that I always ask my guests is, per the title of this podcast series, do you like coffee? And if so, what's your go-to order?
Okay, so yes, I like coffee, but it's not really I don't need it to wake up in the morning and get my day going. So I treat it more as something that I treat myself with from time to time. So I don't have it that much, also because I'm very easily, I easily get that adrenaline rush from it. So it's just sometimes for me. But I usually just get a cappuccino or an iced latte. I prefer the iced drinks. So I'm really just a basic girl who wants that caramel iced latte.
That's my exact... I can't do a hot drink. Everyone has clowned me for it, but despite how cold it might get, I never do a hot drink. It's always an iced latte of sorts. Today I actually have lemonade because I couldn't do caffeine right now, but that's okay. Well, awesome. Great to hear. We'll kind of pivot really quickly. We'll jump into the first theme that I have today, and I'm really excited to hear this about your own journey to Islam, and I'd love to start that off in our conversation, and then kind of jump into different things that comes with being a revert Muslim. And so, from the beginning, what events or realizations did you have that maybe led you to consider Islam, as you're going down in your own life?
I guess I would say that I've always had this sense of longing for inner peace ever since I was a child. I think I was 8 years old when I first had that thought of I need to get inner peace, which is such an odd thing to have at such a young age. But I saw all the things that were happening in the world, and sometimes they can just be so cruel. So I always figured I want to see peace in the world, but I also want to feel peace inside of me. So that's just something that I've always had inside of me. And then during my high school years, I learned more about different philosophies and different religions, because of course you have those classes, and Islam really spoke to me in very through many people, but I wouldn't say it really came from one thing. It's just a journey that inspired me along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And subhanAllah, I think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides that guidance and that hidayah. And so super, so amazing to hear that, you found that sort of guidance to Islam, which is the best thing ever. And then I know you talked about it wasn't one thing or whatever, but is there something that stood out to you, or maybe a particular specific moment or experience that stood out to you on this journey to Islam that has, resonated with you thus far?
I'm not sure if there's one specific moment. I would just say that, first of all, when I was that 8-year-old kid, I had a dream of doing, I just recently learned about how you can do a gap year after high school. So I said to myself, I'll take that gap year and I'll go and find peace. That's what I said to myself. And in my head, it was something like, I will, you know, how the people just visit like an Asian country and just do yoga over there and find peace over there. Just that was what I had in mind at the time. But I didn't realize that the gap year I was like manifesting as a kid would be manifesting in real life, but not after high school, but after my bachelor, and not through traveling, but through like inner travel. So I'm not sure if that's like one experience, but that is like when I realized I've been manifesting, like finding Islam ever since I was a kid. And that was like my biggest subhanallah moment. Like I've truly been guided in a very slow way, but I've been guided all this time.
I love to hear that. You said that so beautifully, inner travel. And subhanAllah, everyone always, and I think that's the beauty of Islam, is like you're always constantly working on yourself to be the best version of yourself. That's amazing to hear. And so talking about that inner work and getting to that point of, you know, taking your Shahada and becoming Muslim, what have you realized, like in what ways has your daily life transformed since becoming Muslim?
So I think it has changed in many ways, but also not that much from like maybe an outside perspective. I think ever since reverting, I feel just so much more gratitude in my daily life. Like I'm so blessed to know the reason why we're here on this earth, because previously I really struggled with that big question of what am I doing here? What is my purpose? But to be able to just say I'm a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm here to serve him. There's how do I say this? Like the world isn't expecting anything from me, just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like that, like really, like I had this heavy feeling on my shoulders, but it just removed all of that. Like I'm just very grateful. I know why I'm here now, and I don't need to focus on that part. I can just focus on all the other more important things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting you say that, because you hear that discussion or talking point of what am I doing here in this world from so many people, and chasing that, like finding purpose in itself takes people like their entire lives. And I think that's where we have, you know, the competitive edge as Muslims in terms of navigating this dunya, is we know very clearly what our purpose is. And it is really, like you said, to be that servant of Allah. And if you just have that mindset, things become easier. Like life, everything is sort of like taking off your shoulders, because you know Allah has you, you know, is there for you 24/7, 365, no matter what. You just need to turn to him and ask him. I love that you found it. I mean, really, like one sister to another, like so excited and so happy for you in embracing that journey. But of course, with that journey comes challenges and also with triumph. So we'll get to that in a different section. But in this specific same like discussion of going, you know, your journey to Islam, how did your, you know, if you don't mind me asking, like how did your family react, you know, to your reversion, and maybe how have you thus approached those discussions about, you know, you being Muslim with them?
Yeah, of course. No, just for background, I come from I was raised as a Christian, so we did have like a religious background. We weren't necessarily that religious. Like growing up, I did go to church, and we prayed before like having our dinner. But I think it helps when your family is also religious. Like the whole understanding of that there is a God helps, I guess. But still, like I feel like me becoming a Muslim has been something that was expected. For like I feel like no one in my family was really shocked by it, because it was like, oh, okay, yeah, she's been researching this for a long time and she's always been attracted to this, so it wasn't necessarily unexpected. But I do think still, of course, it's something to adjust to, because there are changes that come with becoming Muslim. And the reason for that is because as Muslims, we are really like practicing religious people. It's not like we, you can't notice that we do have a religion, because we wear the headscarf, we pray 5 times a day, and we fast during Ramadan. These are all changes that people who are not Muslim are not necessarily confused by, but it's just something that you have to get used to. So that's what my family did. It's just like they're super supportive, alhamdulillah, also very respectful towards it. But of course, it's something to get used to.
Yeah. And I'm really happy to hear, I've had different discussions in different spaces with revert Muslims, and that family dynamics is super sometimes hard to navigate. It's just their test from Allah, and sometimes that is really, really, truly difficult. So I'm super happy to hear that, alhamdulillah, that you have an ease of a story to kind of share with, navigating those conversations with your family as well. And then, as we kind of conclude this first section about your journey, I'd love to hear some maybe perhaps reflections, or, in your opinion, through your journey, in what ways has learning been a part of that? How important has continuous learning been for you? And specifically, maybe if you can share what resources or practices have helped you deepen your understanding of Islam. And I think that will help, if there are people thinking about Islam listening to this, what helps you? What resources were you falling on, and what has strengthened your relationship and understanding of Islam?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I also think that learning about Islam is one of the most important things you can do, because it really gets you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when I was learning about Islam, I especially loved the book Secrets to Divine Love. That was one of my favorites, because it really connected the spirituality and the religion with one another. I previously thought that the two things were separate, but knowing that they could be one and the same in some sort of way was really nice for me, because I started my journey towards Islam really in a spiritual way. So that book really helped me, and I tend to learn a lot from books in general, because I'm when you ask yourself which resources you should use to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to learn more about Islam, you really have to know how do you learn best. And for me, it's always been through books, whether it's someone really explaining it to you, or whether it's through more of a novel. For me, it's always been through books, and I'm not that good with lectures over lectures over lectures. So yeah, for me, it's been books, but also, of course, podcasts or lectures, but just in moderation. I can't watch them again and again and again. So I've always loved, I think her name is Dr. Shaifa Yunus. Her YouTube channel, she's amazing, and yeah, she's really helped me learn more about our place as women in Islam as well. So it's a combination of books and what other podcast style videos. I also loved the book The Ideal Muslim Woman and The Heart of Islam as well.
I will link those below for y'all. Dr. Haifa, I love her. I have been able to attend some of her events in person, and subhanAllah, the way she speaks is just I also really loved her own podcast episode with One Path Network. That was such a beautiful listen to. So I will link those below for our listeners here today to also kind of check out and things like that, because like you said, learning more about Islam is really, it's a continuous journey. You should never feel comfortable in how much you know, and there's always room to grow and when it comes to being a better Muslim. So love that. I'll share those resources in the description below, inshallah. Well, it's awesome that you covered your journey to Islam, but also part of that sometimes as a Muslim woman is the decision making that goes behind wearing hijab. Everyone's sort of hijab journey is different. And so I would love to maybe, ask you about yours, about if you're comfortable with sharing that, and kind of walking us maybe through your own personal journey and decision making when it comes to, the process behind wearing the hijab. How did that go for you, and what was your, thought process behind it?
I've been wearing hijab since Ramadan of this year, so last year, 2023. And I would say the journey towards wearing hijab is really about getting closer to practicing Islam. So from the start, one of the first things I was like desiring to learn when I reverted was, okay, how do I pray? So I spent the first weeks learning how to pray. It took a while, and then once you get it, you also start to understand why it's an obligation. So you feel drawn to it. You understand why we should do it, and for me, I wanted to keep improving my prayer. So at first, I used to pray all at once at the end of the day because it was really difficult for me to pray on time, but also just remembering what to say during prayer. So I did it at the end of the day, for example, in the beginning stages. Then I continued, and I thought, no, I want to start praying on time. And I used to work at a bookstore at the time, so I figured during my break, I will plan it in such a way that my break is during the prayer time, and then I will pray at work. And it felt weird at some point in time because I was during my break, I was dressing myself for proper dressing for prayer, and afterwards I would take it off and would go back to work. And at some point in time, I thought, this is very weird. Like, I am changing myself for prayer and then removing all of that to go back into the world and show myself to all these random people who have no real reason for me to show myself to them. So at some point in time, after really getting more close to my prayer, it just was weird to take my hijab off after prayer. So I figured, just how you have the trial months when you do a subscription of anything, I will do a trial month of wearing hijab during Ramadan. And in my heart, I already knew I'm not going to take it off after the month. But it was just like something I said to myself, like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. Just try it for a month. And then, subhanAllah, of course, you feel so drawn to wearing hijab as a woman once you understand what it's for. So I wore it during Ramadan and I didn't take it off afterwards because it just feels so weird to do that.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I mean, it sounds like you said, like, there was a bit of cognitive dissonance, and when it comes to like praying and then having to take it off, and I can also recall those like feelings of, why, always asking yourself, constantly reflecting like the why behind everything. And I think the one thing that I always iterate to people who are, like you said, curious, not like upset or anything like that, but just curious, I say hijab is my own decision. It is my way of pleasing Allah. And like, that's the end of the conversation there. More than happy, like, if they have other questions, to answer those. But really, I heard it obviously across the board when I talk to people who, women who wear the hijab. It's just such a deep personal thing to kind of commit to, and solely for the sake of Allah. Like, that's such a beautiful thing that I think about, is like, we wake up and we do what we do for the sake of Allah, and we're so visibly doing it. And it comes with challenges, but it's well worth the challenge, of course. And so, speaking of challenges, have you faced any challenges, or maybe also positive experiences? We love celebrating the wins, to wearing the hijab. Like, how has that shaped? How has like wearing the hijab shaped your interactions with others, good or the bad?
Yeah, so like you said, I feel like I've gained a lot from wearing hijab, and if you try to balance it out, I definitely gain more than I lose from it. So I have had more positive experiences than negative ones. Alhamdulillah, I'm so like joyous every time I like come across another hijabi woman and we just smile at each other or say salams, and you don't have to know her. It's just like this mutual understanding of, hey sister. I really love that because as I think you are as well, like, we're living in a a Western world, and I'm not necessarily like I live in Amsterdam, which is a very diverse population, so it's not like a Muslim woman is something that is strange to see. Yet still, it's just beautiful to have that like interaction where you just smile like with a genuine smile to each other, like happy to see you here. And because I'm so like excited about those little moments that I have with these other girls that I come across, maybe I have like negative experiences with hijab, like maybe something hasn't happened to me because of it. Sometimes I have this feeling that perhaps people view me differently now that I wear hijab, but because I just enjoyed wearing it so much, I don't even realize that that may be happening at the same time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think obviously for me at least, it's an external reminder. If I'm ever in a situation where things are doubtful, I always just like, it's quite literally a visual reminder to my own self. It's like, maybe I should remove myself. And also I love the hijabi to hijabi interactions. Like you said, the acknowledgement, the smile, the like whisper of a salams, and like you can connect with any single person while you're walking or traveling anywhere at any point in any place of the world. And that's so surreal, and subhanallah, like that we have such a shared experience through hijab. Amazing. I geek out. I love hearing about everyone's different stories when it comes to hijab and what led them to it. And so it's really awesome to hear about yours and how it's been so positive and beautiful. And that's honestly the only thing I can ever wish for any sort of hijabi that is new to wearing hijab. But also, I, subhanAllah, just celebrated wearing it for 5 years recently. And so it's been a journey across the board, I feel like. So kind of pivoting our conversation, if you don't mind, wanted to tackle that bucket that I kind of alluded to earlier, which is challenges and triumphs. So a bit of both when it comes to, embracing and finding Islam, but also continuously, waking up and choosing to be your best Muslim self. I'm curious to hear about, what challenges did you or have you faced as you embraced being a Muslim or finding Islam? And of course, we don't want to just stop there. I would love to hear about, how you overcame those challenges as well.
My biggest challenge or struggle so far has really been the fact that I don't speak Arabic, and of course Islam or the Quran is completely in Arabic. So at first this was really an insecurity of mine, because I thought I heard someone say that because Islam or the Quran is Arabic, and any translation to my language or another language is really just that. It's a translation. It will never be exactly the same as the Quran. That really got to me, because I figured, okay, well, does that mean I'll never truly be able to understand what the words in the Quran mean? Like, I had this insecurity of I'll never truly know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. And in all honesty, this is something, like, if you ask how I overcame this, it's still something I like face, because also when it comes to for example, memorizing more surahs to do during prayer, for example, or just trying to understand Quran, or trying to understand different words that I hear when I'm listening to podcasts, for example, I feel like I'm such a slow learner when it comes to anything in Arabic, and it takes me such a long time to memorize a new surah. And that is something that I feel is my biggest challenge, because it's just, when you revert, it really feels like, for me at least, it feels like you're reborn, and you enjoy all the things of being reborn. But then you realize, okay, if I'm like a little baby, this also means that I have to relearn everything, and that is also very difficult. My biggest challenge would be not knowing the Arabic language and finding it difficult to learn it, because it's also like one of the most difficult languages to learn. So
I will second that. Learning like Arabic has always been a challenge for me. I'm not a native Arabic speaker, and so what I can, even though I was born Muslim, it's the same struggle, subhanAllah, that like I'm also undergoing and feeling. Because to your point, subhanAllah, like I understand the Quran through translations, English translation, namely. And it's really difficult in knowing that like I am not directly understanding the words on the pages. And we can maybe embrace this challenge together, because there are obviously like people nearby me who there's like I'm thinking about like joining Arabic classes and things like that, but just always taking that initiative, I think for me has helped me. It's like making that intention and commitment to one day be able to open up the Mus'haf and literally read and understand the ayat that are like there in front of me. And that's a journey. It's always going to be a journey. And I just wanted to also echo that I exactly feel what you're going through is it's a challenge, but I always remind myself that like that every time that there is a hurdle that you overcome, that there's going to be ease that approaches. Like with the hardship comes ease, and that's one of my favorite ayat that I always reflect and think about is like with hardship comes ease, and you just need to be able to put your best foot forward and let like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you through that test and challenge.
And also, even struggling to learn a new surah is of course something that you will get rewarded for, like but at the same time, I'm not sure if not starting to not starting the process of okay, I'm starting to learn Arabic now, or I'm trying to memorize more surahs. I'm not sure if it's limiting beliefs that you have, or it's like a little shaitan telling you can't do it. So it's difficult, but I know that after the struggle also comes rewards. So
yeah, no, exactly, like you said, it's those whispers that you need to overcome for yourself, as well as like all these things that comes with any sort of embarking of a religious pursuit. There's always going to be those whispers, and it's just you have to push through, because I always heard that like you should never get to a point where you're hindering yourself from doing good. And so if it stops you, then maybe reassess what those thoughts are in your head, and just to keep pushing forward. But yeah, so speaking, I know we talked about this earlier, your like family dynamics, but I'm curious to understand in this bucket of challenges, has there been challenges when you're reconciling your own new faith with your family's expectations? And then how have you managed those situations if they have, arisen?
I guess the biggest change in expectations from my family has been that they adjusted to me wearing hijab, because they've seen me grow up for so many years, just me showing everything of myself, and then they expect me to do that for the rest of my life, I guess. So the biggest change really has been me wearing hijab, and I was gonna say not being able to do certain things, but I never drank anyway, or I didn't do the things anyway, so I guess that isn't much of a change. And yeah, I'm not sure if there are any hurdles or like expectations that they have had of me. No, I don't think so.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. Wins across the board. Love to hear that, alhamdulillah. And so to close off this section, when it comes to understanding challenges, how has Islam for you influenced your mindset, your approach to hardship, adversity, anything that comes your way? And what lessons have you learned along the way with your own relationship to navigating challenges and hardship through the lens of Islam?
I like this question as well. Like, it really points back to what I was saying in the beginning, like how I've always really longed for both inner peace and like peace in the world, and for like my own hardships or like challenges in life, I am just much more peaceful when it comes to facing them, because I know that either it is something like it's a test for you, and it is up to you to really excel at how you are going to how are you going to handle this test? And if there's something that is difficult in your life, or for example, I'm currently in my master. I'm currently doing my master, so I'm having exams, for example. But anytime I fail at something, I just know, like, if it's not meant for me now, it may be meant for a later time, or it may not be meant for me. And either way, it's fine. So I just really have a lot of peace with anything that happens to me. And also, to go back to, like I said, I was working at the bookstore and I really liked working there. But at that point where I was like, should I not wear hijab? One of the things that came across in my mind was, okay, but how are the people at work going to react to that? So that was just one of the things in my mind. It's not necessarily like it was stopping me, but it may have been. And at one morning, I got a call and they discontinued my contract. And at the time, I was really upset because I really loved working at that bookstore. It's just such a wholesome place to be in general. But just later, I realized, okay, maybe it was stopping me from wearing hijab. So really, just any hardships or any difficulties I face, I'm like, this is gonna be okay. Like, I'm exactly where I need to be. And if it doesn't work out, it's for the best. And it does work out, it's also for the best.
To sum that up, alhamdulillah for everything. And because, like, you never know, you really never know, if we perceive as something is bad, that at the end of the day, like, it might have been good. And you always kind of reflect on these tests that comes your way. But alhamdulillah for everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners, and He's got you. He's got your back. You just need to be patient, practice patience, and have a lot of trust that He'll get you through anything and everything. SubhanAllah.
And to add to that, like, because I was doing like the inner peace and outer peace kind of thing, I also realized that, because of course today we still are seeing so many horrible things happening in this time and in future times as well, probably. But I've gotten more, like, it's still disturbing to see, but knowing that at the end of the day, there's going to be, like, everyone is going to be judged for their actions, whether they have faced the consequences in this life or in the next. Just knowing that there is, like, knowing that everyone is going to be judged based on their actions is just very comforting when you see the cruel things that people do in this world.
Yeah, especially, as you sort of watch and unfold in so many different landscapes, the fact, justice is going to come. Like, there will be a divine justice. If not, like, obviously in this world, there's going to be divine justice in the next world. And that really is comforting in navigating anything that you see on the news or anything, that there's always going to be something that is happening, and having enough trust and comfort knowing that everything happens for a reason and everyone's going to be held accountable to everything in the next life, for sure. Inshallah.
Yeah, exactly. Also, can I add one more thing?
Yeah, no, please do.
So to add to the part on, like, how my family has maybe had challenges with me becoming Muslim, I think it's a cute story. It's about my dad. He's very slow at understanding that as a hijabi woman, you're no longer wearing certain things. So that was fun to see how he didn't really understand that I'm no longer wearing certain types of outfits. And at first, it didn't really get to him. But then we sometimes have this habit of going out and skating, like rollerblading together. And he saw me. I was just wearing like a regular jersey hijab, and he was like, how are you rollerblading with that? That's so dangerous. Or like, he was like, don't you want something that is really made for like a sports hijab? Does that not exist? So I was like, yeah, it does exist, but it's just very expensive. So I'll just use this. And then the next time I saw him, he had bought me this sports hijab, and I almost cried. It was such a sweet moment. And yeah, I think it sums up how at first it's maybe something that is slowly being accepted, and then it's embraced as well, even though one may not truly understand why. But yeah, I feel the support either way.
That's awesome. That's all really like you can ask for, is that support, that tolerance, that acceptance of, you know, your new beginnings and your new journey of being Muslim. SubhanAllah. I'd love to hear. That's such a cute story. Oh my gosh, may he be blessed. That's awesome. So happy to hear that. Well, we've had an amazing conversation thus far. I'm going to pivot, as I always do, to this last section of you being a content creative, a YouTuber in this space as well. Of course, like I said, guys, I will link her YouTube channel below. But as a content creator, how do you balance the time spent creating content online with your own offline commitments? Because, and you can speak to, you know, your goals of what you put on your channel, but like, how do you balance the, you know, your commitment to Islam, your spiritual practices, and then also your, you know, being a content creator, putting content online? What does that look like of a relationship for you?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. I think like anything we do as Muslims, we really have to see what is our intentions with it. And when you talk about balancing it, I think it's very important to remember that it's not, like, it is of course a little bit about balancing, but first and foremost, the top priority should be our deen. And that is also why I'm horribly inconsistent on YouTube. It's because I'm really, like, I cannot, for example, like, if there's a period in time where I struggle with waking up for Fajr, for example, and there's also the same period of time where I struggle with creating YouTube videos, my number one priority should first be to get my prayer in order. So the balancing the two is really about first focusing, is your prayer in order, is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that in order? And then afterwards you can focus on other like worldly obligations or things that you want to do, for example. And when I just talked about intentions, I feel like because I'm creating like sort of Islamic content, because I'm creating content that is sort of Islamic, because I kind of vlog like the lifestyle of a Muslim woman, and I incorporate things from Islam as well, I have to make sure that I don't, for example, do the things that a Muslim woman is supposed to do just so I can capture it on a camera. So I have to do it already. And if I do it, I can also make a video about it. But that is the thing about intention. Like when you're creating a video such as that one, you need to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not for the sake of gaining subscribers or fame or any other worldly thing. So yeah, prioritizing the deen or your religion is the number one, and then afterwards you can focus on the content that you create. And that's also why I'm horribly inconsistent, because it's just something that is pretty difficult to do.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in our own like separate conversations, consistency being a top priority for both of us in this new year. But I think that's so important, is when you go through these, I've also found myself as like when I go through these like inconsistent ruts, there is something happening behind the scenes, of course, that is causing me to be inconsistent, and I always have to, you know, choose Allah over any sort of other thing, and it just takes a second to kind of rebalance and reshape and kind of align moving forward. So I love that entire reflection that you just sort of spoke about. I can second and echo all of that as a YouTuber myself as well. So speaking of that, you know, how have you encountered any challenges or perhaps temptations when it comes to navigating the digital world while striving to maintain, you know, your strong connection to Islam and your own faith? How do you address it? What do you know, if you're feeling it, are there practices that you kind of like do to overcome it? Maybe perhaps similar to the question I just asked. So if it's redundant, I apologize. But are there any things that you do to address the temptations that comes with, you know, the internet, the digital world, and how do you kind of reconcile that?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So I've been doing YouTube for 2 years now, also very inconsistently. And at first, of course, because I wasn't Muslim yet, I was just creating other videos. And anyone who starts YouTube knows that in the back of your head, you're like, ooh, I want to have subscribers. I want to create videos that people love. I want to grow this beautiful community. And those are things that you can get too much into, in the sense that it becomes really a worldly thing that you're desiring. Like in one word, you're desiring fame, for example, and that's or becoming viral, and that's really not in alignment with doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would say. So I've kind of said to myself, okay, as long as you can say Bismillah before doing anything you're doing, it's okay. But if you can't say Bismillah before doing it, then it's probably not good to do. And for me, like, what helped me most with ensuring that, like, my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my number one priority is that I made dua every day, asking Allah, please rid me of any ill intentions I may have with regards to my YouTube channel, whether I realize I have them or I'm not even aware of them. So even if you're at first secretly doing anything you're doing for anything other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can make dua to help you get rid of those intentions, even if you are not even aware you have them. So I started making that dua almost every day, because in my heart I was like, I really want to focus on this YouTube channel because I really love sharing my thoughts and connecting with other Muslims around the world, or other girls who are thinking about becoming Muslim. But I was just really afraid that I was doing it for the wrong reasons, maybe unintentionally. That's why I started making the dua. And I noticed that once I really started focusing on making those duas, it was then that my channel got a lot of attraction. And this one video was doing really well. And I realized, okay, that's interesting to see. And I continued doing that. I kept asking, oh, rid me of any intentions that are not for the sake of you. And then at some point I realized I should no longer share my face online. So I started questioning which videos did I make truly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to achieve some other worldly desire. And I realized, okay, there really is no point for me to share my face online. Just for me personally, I realized I lose more from it than I gain from it, because you get comments you don't want to see, or it doesn't help me. So why should I do it? So then I started I recently removed all my videos where I'm showing my face in it, and I noticed that the more things, even if they are very tiny, the more things that I do because I think this is better for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the more I get back from it. So
thank you for sharing that. I mean, like you said, I just love hearing you have those boundaries, or internal checks that you have consistently that allows you to remind yourself, why you're doing what you're doing. And I feel like everyone who's especially in the digital space, doing content and things like that, should always, as a Muslim, have those internal check-ins about your heart and the why, because I've talked about this in previous videos. It is easy. It is super, it's scaringly, terrifyingly easy to sort of lose, you're the correct intentions, or get lost, or lose purpose of that why. And I always tell myself, if I can no longer answer the why, how can I answer that to Allah on the day of judgment? That's what I ask myself. It's like, if I can't answer my own why now to my own self here doing what I do, how am I supposed to answer that question when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking me, why did I post what I posted, or why did I do what I did? And I think it's also just always heightened when you do put it online. I think people forget that. Like, even in your daily life, when you're making the decisions you're making, that you need to have the right intention behind it. But especially like these videos or whatever you're putting out there live on the internet. They live there for, even if you take it down, right? Like, you don't know where your content is going to live elsewhere. And I think that's so important to always reflect on and remind yourself, is answer the why, do the due diligence, do the digging, do all the questions before ever posting anything out there, because, you know, you want to, for your own self, protect your own self from going down a path that like is super tempting, super easy, but you don't want to go down either as well. And so last question that I have before the actual last question, but the last question in this bucket theme of balancing and kind of like asking yourself, like, how do you approach digital and content creation? Do you have any practical tips that you can share, or strategies that you've personally implemented when it comes to either, you know, managing your own screen time, engaging positively on social platforms like YouTube, and then generally, like, how do you foster a healthy balance between online presence and then your personal life? Like, what does that relationship look like?
Yeah, okay, that's a lot in one question.
I know. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Well, first of all, I think it's important to say that YouTube is one of the, in my opinion, better social media apps to be on. Like, there's much more positivity than compared to Instagram, for example. Like, sometimes I see the Instagram comments and I'm just shocked at what people dare to just comment, like, no one is watching. So YouTube is very kind when comparing to that. So when it comes to managing like the relationship and like your mental health as well, I think YouTube is a better platform to be on. And when it comes to interacting with like the people that are on my channel, it's really mostly really lovely people, and just love seeing it all. And I just try to not respond every day to comments that I have. I don't respond to my comments every day, just because it gets a little bit overwhelming sometimes. Even if it's just a few comments, it's just for my own not being on top of it all the time. And so I would say I focus on it once a week, and then I just see how, like, the lovely comments that there are, and I make sure that, like, I see my YouTube channel as like my little digital home. So I heard someone say, like, this is my home, you should take your shoes off when you enter. So if there is any inappropriateness that I witness, then I should have the liberty to delete that as well, for example. So it's really just my place, and I can really, you know, interact the way I want to interact, and I really love that. And when it comes to screen time, I also struggle with that as well, because of course it's so addicting to just be on your phone the whole day or whatever. So that is also something I'm still working on, but yeah, it gets better a little bit every day, I guess.
As long as you're aware, self-aware is super important when it comes to having that healthy relationship generally with your phone and screen time and things like that. So one day at a time, for sure. Well, thank you, so much for having this conversation, walking us through, your own journey to Islam, touching upon subject matters like challenges and positive experiences, which I always love to highlight the positivity when it comes to the transformation journey that Islam takes us all on. And then, of course, these tidbits, as a YouTuber like yourself, love hearing about that as well. Final question that I have here for our conversation that I love asking people because I learn a lot. What is one lesson learned that you know now that you wish you could have told your younger self? It can be anything, it can be any sort of tidbit, but anything that's resonated with you thus far that you wish you knew sooner.
difficult question because honestly, my younger self was probably too stubborn to really take, like, if you come with a big life lesson, it'll be, my younger self would probably be like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I guess I would just say, like, that inner peace that you've been longing for, like, you will attain it, and that peace in the world that you so much desire, that is also something that will happen, and maybe not right now, maybe not in this life, but like, I've been, like, as a kid, I've been just I thought I was naive because I wanted the world to be a place where we're all just running through the field and having houses, and basically I was describing like a home in a garden underneath which rivers flow. Like, I thought this world could be as Jannah is described right now, but I guess, like, I wanted the little version of me to know that what you want for this world may not happen right now, but it is a place that exists. Like, I think that would give me a little bit of calmness, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, subhanAllah. This world is, do what you can now to achieve, that everlasting peace, that everlasting Jannah, inshallah. Well, that's a beautiful way to sort of end our conversation, finding, working towards achieving inner peace and always reminding yourself of the purpose and the why and the intention. So thank you again, Sydney, for jumping in, having this lovely, lovely conversation. I learned so much. It's been such a pleasure. Guys, I'm going to link, of course, all of her YouTube channel and all the resources that we mentioned in our conversation in the description below. Thank you again for jumping on. I appreciate it. Had such a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's such an honor being here, and I also had a really lovely time also getting to know you as well.
Listeners, you heard it here. We talked all things about a revert's journey to Islam, navigating wins, triumphs, also challenges, but always kind of looking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a guiding, help and divine presence. And so I thank you for joining us in this conversation, and I look forward to having you join other episodes of Coffee Chats with Aisha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.